Hi, I'm Ricardo Corvey and welcome to the Rainbow Room International podcast channel. Today we're doing part 2 of Adrian Foxworthy, our director at Clarkson and East Kilbride Salons podcast. This is his second part of it. We finished off the first podcast and it's just before Clarkson's about to open, which is our first franchise in the brand. So we're going to catch up with that right now. Basically at home, it's the night before you're about to do this leap of faith as the first franchisee of the brand, also the first salon not in the city centre. At that time, what's going through your head at that point?
What's going through my head? I was so excited just to get this massive opportunity to probably prove to myself that this salon it had to work. It was never not going to work.
Yeah.
So night before, you have the full team in, which is Dougie, Carol, Gina and Gus.
Yeah.
Alan and Linda. Alan had decided to go off to Barbados.
Oh, had he?
Which I don't know if you knew. So
yeah.
I remember saying
that was a big birthday. Did he fly out? Was that the one where he flew out in Concorde?
And then he picked up his new Bentley and drove it up to see me when he came home. That one.
Hilarious.
So
Hilarious.
I remember saying to him, "You can't leave me." And I remember him saying, "Adrian, you're trained again to a very high standard. I wouldn't leave you if I think you needed me. And I'll see you when I'm back." Which
bye, good luck,
right,
no
okay,
parachute,
okay,
crack on.
Again, I trusted him.
No, but the work had been done,
Yeah.
obviously. The work had been
Trust
done
is trust for me is a huge thing. So I trusted him, he trusted me. And the night before, as you know, there was a lot of cleaning.
Yeah.
You're trying to push on to the early hours in the morning to get this salon open.
I still look at the floor and think of the legends that scraped the grout off my tiles. It's a bit kind of, at our age now, and when it gets a bit emotional, to be honest, totes emotional, that, it gets a bit, and there's sometimes, and if anybody's disrespecting my shop or my salon but not looking after it, I got to tell, Alan gives me into trouble because I call it a shop, right? Because I come from the chip shop background, right? I see shop all the time, say the salon. Alan gets really angry at that, but, hey, we had them for 65 years before we had hairdressing salons, so it's where I'm at. But I get really angry at people not looking after the salon, not necessarily because of mine and what I did, but even just the people that were there that night before that scraped my floor to make sure those customers were able to walk in.
Teamwork, isn't it?
Yeah.
Teamwork makes the dream work.
Yeah, of course. But it's just, it's really important that. So
you're all in. I think it's that Rainbow Room family again. It's well, it's the bookkeeper, it's the guy that's designing the salons, or the computer guy. We're all in it together. Yeah. The main goal is to get the salon open, and again, whatever it takes, we will get it done. Yeah. So, opened the doors. Yeah. Off we went. So I had myself, a receptionist, and I had back then 2 stylists and 1 assistant.
Right.
Is that right? Right. So, so that was interesting in the first year. So the salon flew from day one. Yeah. I remember being up there. I tried the early bird thing, be up there at 7:15 in the morning. I never left that salon. I remember Alan phoned once to say, do you actually sleep? I mean, I think he phoned me at 8:30 one night and I was still cutting somebody's hair. Back then I had no children and I was used to working crazy hours. So I would just keep taking clients until I probably couldn't see. So, and then go home, crash, and go up the next day. And each day was, for me, so exciting.
And was it new? Well, obviously, did you get much your own clientele, city centre base, transfer over? Did they follow you, or were you building a new clientele?
Well, I was really pushing my hours. Yeah. So I'd be working back then the 6 days. Yeah. And I remember later on saying to Alan, phoning him to say, can I open a 7th day? And he said, who's going to work that? And I said, let me worry about that. So I would just do 7 days and employ new people that would work that Sunday. and just kept building and building and building the business, driving forward. But looking back to it, it hit the floor running. At the time, you know, my receptionist wasn't right. She went off sick, personal stuff. So you're running a new salon with no receptionist. I would be worried about my assistant because I only had one. So at 10 o'clock at night or 9 o'clock at night, I'd be brushing and mopping the floor because she'd been helping me up until 6 o'clock. And then it was really just me in the salon myself taking clients because I'd left. But it was really exciting and it was fun. And it was the dog determination to, at all costs, this salon would not fail. Yeah.
And you pretty quickly were kind of, as you said earlier on in the first podcast, that you kind of, you know, the arithmetic thing at school, and then getting into the structure of the brand, and then going down the 365 route and finding out about the systems to work the salon. Did you find that part, you know, the profit and loss, the making sure it was turning a profit, making sure that stuff was away in the bank to pay the big scary bills when it first came? Were you starting to get a grasp of that pretty quickly and getting excited about that as well?
I think, I remember at the start because we were really busy, and I think it was your wedding, that I decided I wanted this black Versace suit.
Right, okay.
So I went out and bought it, and then realised the VAT bill was due a couple of months later.
Yeah.
But it was a nice suit.
Aye.
And it was a great wedding. So you know, you learn when we had been trained and you did know about that, but I think you can get lost a wee bit in the hype of when you're very, very busy and you're not counting the pound note.
Yeah.
You know, so it was a quick lesson. There was money there to pay it was fine, but it was a bit tight. Yeah. And after that, you focused on more detail with pound note. Doesn't matter how busy you were, you weren't waiting to the end of the year for your accountant to tell you what you made.
Well, that brings me to the point, because as a young guy coming up behind you, kind of now going, because it did set the cat amongst the pigeons that all of a sudden this guy was doing this thing, and there would be stylists that would be a wee bit older than me that I'd grown up under, that it's not that their noses were out of joint, but it's they didn't ask the question. Right, yeah, exactly as you said. You asked the question. You went, Alan.
It always comes up, why were you the first? And to me, it's not about being the first. That was not the goal. It was just I was ready. Yeah. So I mean, there was brilliant hairdressers and people before me. Yeah. But I was ready, and I knew exactly what I wanted. And again, Alan and Linda were able to facilitate that with me.
But you'd made the plan, and that thing, and I think that was kind of one of the really strong points of your first podcast. Is just that I asked the question.
Yeah,
and
if you don't ask, you don't know. I think in the early days of running, you know, that first year with not having my receptionist a lot of the time, not really knowing how to deal with that properly, it was very, very hard juggling. Although I was very busy and you're working long hours, and you know, it was all great. You'd be doing, back then I would be doing at least 16 clients a day, trying to interview stylists, try to run a receptionist with no receptionist, try to get new assistants in, and also manage the ones that I had in with me at the time, the team. So to grow it, looking back, probably it was a bit bonkers, but I think if you're really focused, you find a way, and it's just you grow and you grow and you grow, and you know, some people it doesn't fit and it's not for them. No. That's fine. Yeah. They're great human beings, but it's just not.
But that was
it's not going to work,
wasn't it?
So and then the ones that do stay with you become very successful around you, and that helps them and it helps you as well.
Got you. So I'm looking from my viewpoint, and the thing that was really interesting for me, and again I'm coming back with my self-employed background and my mum and dad, my parents, grandparents and uncles and aunts.
Do you think that helped you? Because I came from a background nobody was self-employed.
Yeah, because I knew that it was going to be a nightmare from the start. I was under no illusion. And at the time that I came into hairdressing was probably the absolute worst our family business was at, and what they were trading, what they were turning over, the state of the business structurally, what it looked like, and financially.
So it's better maybe not knowing.
And watching kind of what it did to my dad, you know, and who he was at the sort of start of my journey and where he was by the time I was a 17, 18-year-old kid. And then by the time I qualified, the chippy had been rebuilt, and so you're talking 90, 91, 92, and then what it got to at that period, and my brother taking it over and all that. So I was under no illusion, and it was a bit of a risk because I was maybe a wee bit too much like my dad and certain things, but what jumped out at me, because we were similar in that, you know, we liked our clothes, we liked going out, we both had a huge passion for cars and that kind of stuff, was that all went. I remember you getting rid of everything. I remember the cars going, and you had a particular car at the time, which some people would still think it was their dream car, but I knew it wasn't your dream car at that time, and that was a big light bulb to me as well, because I knew Alan and Linda had done it on the fly in the past as well. Some people would maybe not notice, but you would go, and I remember other stylists once going, the Porsche went, and Alan's now told the story, they're buying the Porsche and then the tax bill coming and the Porsche going, you know, within 2 weeks of buying it. So I saw that, but that always brings me an amazing story with you, where kind of you'd got to that period at the end, and you'd been up at gym, and there was this, you know, the VAT had been paid, and the taxman had been paid, and the bills had all been paid, and the turnover was brilliant, and there was this little chunk of change, and you get the best lesson in customer service in your life, because you drove into a certain brand in the car that you bought when you opened the salon. And do you want to tell the story about the test drive? Without
the test drive in
CLK.
CLK.
Well, you went in with the Polo.
Oh, this was the.
You went in with the Polo.
So the salon was doing really, really well, and I had my girlfriend at the time. We had decided, which went on to be my wife. We decided it was £200, and although the business was doing well, she would use the car sometimes, and so would I. So she would pay £100 and I'd pay £100. So that's how tight it was back in the day. And people don't believe me now.
No.
But that was the situation.
I think that's really important. It's one of the things that I've been really passionate about with the podcast, is going, please don't concentrate on what you see as the finished article. No. Not that any of us actually see ourselves as a finished article, but it's that point. I think,
even like at the early start, when I didn't have a receptionist, I'd stay at night and I'd be counting the 5p's and the 10p's for the banking, and then I'd walk across the road and bank the money, and then either walk home or get a bus home, or if it was really busy that day, I'd get a taxi home. So depending, I was busy, but it was the team busy for me to generate profit to get home, because I lived in Giffnock at that time, so it was down the road. So looking back, but anyway, I had this wee red Polo, and I went out to Mercedes garage, and it was an SL. It was an SL silver, I always remember it. And I'd said to the guy, he saw me drive in a Polo, and I said, I need to test drive that, if that's okay. And he says, tell me a bit about yourself. And you know, that wouldn't happen now, but I was a wee bit wet behind the ears. So I said, I've got this business, it's been open a year, it's absolutely mobbed, it's doing really well. And he went, no, you won't be able to afford that car. And I said, what do you mean? And he says, you won't get finance, you only open a year. And I says, no, I will, leave that to me. And he went, no, we deal with the finance. So I said, I take it you're not letting me test drive it? And he says, no. So I actually went to BMW and bought a 328, beautiful BMW in blue with light interior. And I remember, I didn't have many days off. I actually did the thing, I drove the car back to the showroom and showed the guy.
Brilliant.
And asked him if he was on commission. Because the car I bought was even better than the car that I was trying to buy. And
it's the pretty woman moment, isn't it?
Yeah,
it was just big mistake, huge mistake.
I wasn't accepting. I think, again, the nature is, I'll accept it or you don't. But it was the principle of, I wanted his boss to know he'd lost,
of course,
the deal.
But the beauty that always comes for that, for me, was that I instantly am back in 15, downstairs, and Alan and Linda are doing their week's seminar when we're starting. And they always told you, never presume. Don't judge a book by their cover. They're in that seat. And if they're in that seat, and whether they've got £1 in their pocket or they've got £1 million in their pocket, they are getting looked after to a standard that is our standard.
I remember,
we should always do that. And the idea that didn't happen because the guy's made a judgment of the car that you're driving in or how long your business has been opened or whatever is just... I love the yin and yang of it. I love the fact that it was, from my early days and day one of do not presume, to watching you do what you did, sacrifice, work the hours that you worked, build the business to that point, know that it was financially secure, because what you didn't do is just open up and go, hey, I'm a big man now, I want a flashy car. The bit that was always really funny is the fact is Jim going, no, you can buy that car. You can buy that car now. But it was the idea that you had that set, the business was set, that was okay, and it allowed you to do that. But that guy presumed that you weren't going to be able to get that car. I love that. It's an early part of your journey and story of what Clarkson. I love that.
Maybe it was a wee bit wrong going back to the showroom, but your nature is your nature, So, but it was interesting times. Building Clarkson was full of fun. Just exciting, collecting people, growing people. And again, what I really came in to do was two things in hairdressing. One was to cut people's hair, and it is a gift to make people look and feel fantastic. And I know it sounds corny, but the best feeling in the world is when you finish that client and they've come in and maybe they're down a wee bit and they leave and they're walking to reception as if they're walking in air and they just feel fantastic about themselves. And that's what I came into hairdressing with. But the second part of my development would be people, and it's getting people to join you, as I did Alan Linda. It's the same thing, and they grow with us, and hopefully they change their lifestyle, and they achieve their own goals with you. So it's a journey, and that's something that really is strong all these years on. Well, now, I'm 40 years doing hairdressing, and I still get really excited with that young person that becomes a stylist.
So on that note then, you're sitting with yourself, two stylists, sometimes a receptionist and an assistant. When did the team numbers jump? When did all
develop?
This,
probably into... It took me 10 years to build that salon. And in year 10, it was really seriously busy. It was 11 stylists doing 13,000 clients. Sorry, 13,000 visits a year with 11 stylists.
Wow.
And there wasn't a lot of part-timers.
No.
Well, then there was any.
They hadn't been invented yet either.
And it was only built with 12 sections. And then I got Alan to put another 2 in with Doogie. I remember they coming out and they made it to 14. And then later on, I did a refit and asked for 16. Knowing fine well, I'll never get a 16, and I got my 15th in there. So it's got 15 sections in there now. Yeah. So that allowed me. I had to spread the hours to create a bigger team. So I had to go to 7 days a week for me to grow that business the way I imagined where I wanted that business to be. And maybe to answer your question, it'd probably be year 3 that I really started, 3, 4, 5, started to really grow it. But then I would probably say 5 to 8 was the muscle.
Because so I'm pretty much, by that point, I'm managing and I'm kind of integral to that B Street team at the time. And obviously, the Buchanan Street swagger was, 15 might be creative and you might all be cool and fabulous, but we're taking all the awards home at Congress, right? So Linda B and all that crew. Thanks very much. That's great. You can be as trendy as you want, but salon team of the year is going to be Buchanan Street and and then all of a sudden, all these suntanned upstarts from Clarkson started going on, which is needless to say how Jackie came into my life, because I'm going, who's this with the long hair and the leather trousers that keeps going up and getting all these awards? And how do I know who she is? So it was obvious because, again, rightly or wrongly or for whatever reason, Clarkson changed the perception of what could get done on a continual client visit. And Buchanan Street used to lead the figures in number of clients. And needless to say, flagship salon, first salon, 25 sections, all these people. And, you know, and I was lucky enough to be one of those guys. I mean, I opened up, you know, I started my column and I was fully booked for a year, just literally through footfall. But when it came to retail, when it came to treatment, all of a sudden, you guys changed the entire game. Now, when I say you guys, what I really mean is you changed the game on that, because yes, it was part of the figures, but colour was maybe the focus. But all of a sudden, this passion for, and retail was always passionate within it, but you guys took it, you know, the 120 level was invented for maybe Linda Berdetti, but it was invented for Jackie and Shannon at the end of the day, because they were the guys that started hitting those numbers.
I think looking back to Clarkson was Shannon had joined me from town a wee bit later on and stood out very simple that she wanted to learn management, a bit like I did with David, and was very much a person, you educate her one thing, she'll do that and add to it. She'll do everything you would teach her, which was good, because although I was really busy and successful, it was just, I needed more than just me.
Of course.
So Shannon fitted that role beautifully. It worked for her and it worked for me. And I had a big belief that clients, very much early days back in 15, Alan Linda's culture of, Alan had invented his own product range, and I just really bought into it on the fact that I wanted my clients to have the best product on their hair and scalp, so that their hair looked the best it could ever look for the duration they weren't in the salon. And then I was lucky enough to invent my own products later on with that, and then collecting people like Jackie and other amazing stylists who gravitated into that team of myself, Shannon, Jackie, etc., of, you know, educating the clients to put a treatment on their hair, what it does to their hair, change the visit a wee bit, inventing that new treatment, which had an amazing smell, that clients came through Clarkson's door, and it wasn't a massive salon, but they could smell this new treatment. And it was very exciting. So collecting the right people around me and them being successful with me really helped build Clarkson. So although I was putting it together, it was my people that were winning.
Yeah, of course.
So,
but the numbers changed. I mean, it did. I mean, all of a sudden, you know, we talk about
the culture changed.
Yeah,
and that's the big word.
Also, with the introduction of the treatment, right? We'll talk about the treatment. Because there's a chicken and egg moment I need to ask about this, right?
Right, okay.
And that, because you hit upon the smell of the treatment, right? And listen, this is not made up. This is the fluke of the podcast, right? As you know, I start each first part with 2 chocolate bars and they've got to choose, right? I go and fill my Forest Communication Systems water bottle, and I go into the kitchen to fill it up, same as I do every time. And lo and behold, the infamous drumstick lollipop is sitting in a box in there. So, chicken and egg. Did the air freshener come first that smelt of drumsticks and Clarkson, and that's where you decided to then make the treatment smell of it? Or did you come up with the idea of the treatment smelling like drumstick lollipops first and then get the air freshener in?
Okay, let's come to how we invented works, and then I'll come to the questions. Is we had a great treatment Alan had invented, but in my head it took too long.
Yeah.
So I remember saying to Alan, I really want to invent a treatment that is as good, if not better, than yours. And it has to fast.
Yeah.
And it needs to smell like this. And I gave him the drumstick lollipop.
Right.
So back then, remembering products were built in St Ives. Down in the south of England, and it would take over a year for the product to come up and down for me to test until I was happy with. And then we came to a name, and I struggled with that. So I got the product exactly the way I wanted it. It wasn't too heavy, it was fast, it was effective, and it smelled amazing. And Alan came up with the genius idea of works with an X. And that's how that came about. So the smell of the treatment came first, and then I thought if we enhanced the smell in the toilets, the aroma of this beautiful scent would go around the salon. One, people would ask what that is, which opened the conversation, and two, it was so successful, the product, and really exciting, because on one hand, it goes back to you're helping clients achieve amazing hair, whether it's a comb or a scissor or a product.
Of course.
For me, it's everything.
Yeah.
It has to be the right haircut for the face shape. It has to be the right products they use at home to look after their hair, whether it's 5 weeks, 6 weeks, or 7 weeks out the salon. The right colour for their skin tone. It's a package, and I had a big belief that I needed a treatment that was fast and quick to deal with that, and lucky enough, that's how it came about.
The other thing is, it does tie into your nightclub years, because it was the staple lollipop that we would get in the toilets. You know, that the wee guy with the change, and on the wee dish, there would always be drumstick lollies. And needless to say, they were a stalwart in my life, because obviously we sold them all the time, the chippy. But it was genius. But again, it's one of these things where, I mean, what are you talking? Nearly 30, 28 years or something like that since it came about, that those products are ours. You know, when people go, were they tested on animals? I always laugh and go, no, Glosshold was tested on my hands. That's right. It was sprayed on me, and then it was, are your hands itchy? No. That's right, well, that's going to be okay. And you obviously talked about that getting set up. Yeah. So was it a year from...
We would do half head tests. So they would come up and we'd use one treatment on one half of the head and on another, and you had to have several models because everybody's hair is different. Yeah. And then whether it's curly hair, a lot of hair, fine hair, and we'd be constantly going back and forward because the product had to be right. We could not rush this. Yeah. It maybe take a wee bit longer than a year. But when it came out, it just was dynamite.
And it was originally in the wee
and as tub, wasn't it? Alan's, it works. It's genius.
Yes,
you know,
does what it says in the tin.
I mean, you always wish you thought of that, but you didn't.
It was amazing. So, but what's really exciting about that is, so here you go. You open the salon, you build these stylists. They get really behind you and into the ethos of what you're trying to do. You change the culture in reconditioning services in the salon. And not only you do that and push by the fact that you're busy and time has always been important to you, you then change the actual treatment and how you do it and what you're using on the hair. Yeah. And then get it to turn this thing into this incredible product that's still on our shelves to this day.
Due to the building of Clarkston, Alan and Linda wanted me to go down to London 3 times a year for business coaching for 2 days. So it's 6 days in the year. And that was quite different because I didn't go anywhere myself. Yeah. You know, I didn't go to London myself. I didn't do that. So jumping on a plane and going down to London and sitting in Covent Gardens the night before in a restaurant yourself was really weird. But you got to know other hairdressing business people, and eventually you didn't have to go out yourself, but you learned from each other along the way. And I remember being down there and the penny dropped that although I invented this product, that maybe we had to use a different form of shiatsu, because we did the shiatsu when clients come in for the shampoo, but I wanted it to be different. And I was in Paris, I think it was, in a hair show, and I saw Leslie Spears and 365 had brought out this 3 Japanese people, I think, if I remember rightly, to this music, and they did this head and shoulder massage, and I thought, I think I'm going to go back and see Alan Linda about that. So I was desperate to get back from that course and that show, and they said, yeah, go for it. So I invented the new deluxe that went down onto the shoulders, again pampering clients more, changing the experience of a client visit, and it was always becoming more luxury based. And crazy enough, at that time I went and got a Porsche, surprise, and I was over in Bearsden, Glenfargo, you'll like that story, and they slide the doors open as you drive out. And I was with my wife at the time, and she said, please don't do this. And I got the CD of the Japanese music, and I got him to put in the front boot, as the Porsche has, the disc. And the guy's looking at me as I'm driving out with this. I wouldn't even try to pretend the Japanese music was. So that was the strange story of the guy must have thought.
I'm loving the fact that you're
got the right one here.
I like the fact that you're staging the arrival of your Porsche. But that, again, what's really important about that is the idea that that's the norm now. You know, I get this head massage. You know, and even at that point,
tries to change the client's visit all the time.
But that idea of taking it to that level, then it is huge. You know that I mean, even to the point where there's us back in Tokyo 8 weeks ago, going to a head massage place, and obviously they do it lying down, but they have that shoulder move, and they're doing that shoulder move, and they were amazed when we were asking the correct questions.
That's right.
That's what blew them away, because they were going, the hell do they know what to ask? But I'm trying to explain, listen, we've been passionate about this. This has been core to our brand for that long. But I think what you demonstrated greatly in redevelopment of the Shiatsu is that didn't stay still either. No. To the point we were actually kind of internally looking at taking it to the next stage just now as well. And we're kind of looking at that. And I think that one of the most difficult things for us as mentors and directors now is getting across that thing of, listen, this Shiatsu is really important to us. It's our baby, and it still needs to be the best thing that client gets. You know,
it relaxes the client as soon as they're in the seat.
It's never changed, has it? And never to underestimate just the power of washing somebody else's hair and the fact that the client loves it. But I think it's really interesting and really important for everybody out there to know that, you know, these things were absolute core from the success of Clarkson, that we got to that point.
Thinking back, it wasn't trying to be different or trying to change the client's visit. It was just, I just believed it was right to do. And when Alan were always open to good ideas. And I think looking back, being more educated now, when Alan and I said yes, you knew it was a good idea. Because they wouldn't deal with something if it wasn't. So
but you know what I think as well, the message coming out from especially Alan and Linda's podcast is, if there was a problem or a difficulty they were facing, they always came at it of going, what would be the positive outcome? So you're sitting going, we're doing loads of clients and we're running out of seats. I'm passionate about these treatments, but it can't take 15 minutes under a dryer anymore. I need this thing to work in 3 minutes.
I was teaching the team this week in one of the salons about solutions. You know, you've got to find a solution to something that's not right. And like that, we were just finding a solution to, it was trying to get more clients to experience what the product does. So the solution had to change. I had to find a solution, and we found that.
But it was positive. It wasn't, you know, because some outlook and some businesses might go, well, we need to either cut or reduce or take away. Whereas yourself, Alan, Linda, you know, the way that they were talking about it was always about adding to, making better, but problem solving within that.
I think as well, I mean, as you know, the company is full of a lot of special people, and you just do your bit in the jigsaw, as I call it. So, you know, photograph it. No, I'm not your guy. Standing on stage, I'll do it if you want. But running salons, vetting products, changing systems, bringing in extensions, bringing in keratin treatments, then that's what I do. And by we all doing our part of the company creates this amazing muscle of Rainborough International.
Again, as well, that idea of always having that outlook where you're always looking for, you know, what could be the next thing, what could enhance the visit. Where does that come from? Where do you find the time in what you're doing to then go, right, I want to do something different, or I want to find something different?
I'm always looking at my salons. I only cut in one salon, but I'm in both of them all the time, back and forward. And I'm always looking to see what could be better. But it has to be better. You don't change something for the sake of changing.
No.
So we've all got 24 hours in a day. I am real time poor. So every minute or every hour has to be spent wisely. So I'm always looking, and if I feel I don't see anything, I move on. I don't waste time. So it's looking to see, like this week, 2 of my team have came up to me with ideas, and I really like them. So it's just like me going to Alinda. It's part of a team.
That's it. You've got to have the same approach, innit?
And it's like one brain will only deal with one thing. 100 brains surely would be better. And being open to the team and educating them that if their idea doesn't get pushed forward, don't get down about it.
Yeah.
Let's find the next one. But
let's keep that what if channel open. So you've touched on it there, that obviously Clarkson success, 10 years in, you're running out of chairs, you're running out of space, you're running out of time,
days,
the whole shebang. So East Kilbride, 2006, that journey is about to begin. So when did that conversation start? How did that come around?
So year 5 and 8, I said Clarkson really built, and then I would say from 8 to 10 was the point that I would think of. I remember on a Friday, I used to stop at 5:15. Remember I had 11 stylists. And back in the day I'd be there till 7, 8 at night. So I remember taking that 45 minute, and I would used to go down to this wee pub down the road, drive down to it, and you were allowed 1 pint back in the day then. So I would take my figures down, always figure based, and I would analyse the figures all the time, and I would have the hour in this of my life to actually look to say, away from the salon, because people were always pulling at me all the time. What about this? What about that? Choose a colour, recruitment, interviews, helping young managers learn. So I had to be away from the salon but not go to my home.
Got you.
So I would go to this area and I would take an hour, call it, to look at where I was at this week, where I was at the last 4 weeks, what was it compared to last year. And I realised, I remember turning around before I left the salon was jumping, and I actually thought, I don't really have a job anymore here. It all kind of works.
Yeah.
So a lot of people were pulling at me. They didn't need to. It kind of ran itself, but we know a business doesn't run itself.
Of course, no. But
so at that point, I thought, could I do a number 2?
Yeah.
And again, had to be the conversation with Alan Linda. What's the pros and cons? Alan would be very honest about it, saying it's a game changer. You're one salon. You go to 2, you're not in that salon. It's a different playing field you're in, Adrian. And be careful what you wish for. So it wasn't saying you can have it. He didn't play it down. He was just honest with me. And again, I liked that. So East Kilbride came up, and I thought, let's go for that. It was time for another challenge, and it would allow the team in Clarkson to grow, but it got me back into that really special place that I think it brings the best out in you when you need to perform.
Yeah.
Because at that stage, you were still performing, and it was it was a seriously busy salon, probably the busiest in Scotland, I would have to say at that point, for the square foot. But I needed a new challenge, personally.
So you pick the site, it's all built, you've been through the night before again, everybody's up scraping the tiles and filling the shelves and all that. So how much of a team transition, how many people did you take up to?
So at that time, Jackie wanted to come with me and learn what Shannon was doing. And so it was myself and Jackie, and I had to pick up 2 stylists along the way.
Right.
Which I'd already picked up a guy that worked for me in Clarkson, but he knew he was going up to East Kilbride, and then I had to pick one up within the first week or 2.
Right.
So there was only 4 of us, and we were up there. But I remember leaving on a Saturday, and although the first year was very good up there, we had a client number. We knew on average bill was a break even because all the training with 365 and Orlando. So we knew what your fixed costs were, your wages, your stock, and I knew an average bill net times your client number is what we need to take. And I remember being 4 clients short. And I remember driving home that Saturday thinking, it's in debt.
Yeah.
And Clarkson was never really like that.
That happened, yeah.
So that was an interesting, because remember I was leaving a salon with 11 stylists.
Of course,
with huge amount of visits yearly. back then it was taking a lot of money over 4 weeks for then.
Yeah.
And
for now.
And probably now,
and for now.
Yeah, it actually did £52,000 net in 4 weeks.
Yeah. Yeah, no,
18 years ago, 19 years ago.
Amazing.
It was phenomenal. But remember that all these stylists were earning great wages because it was so busy and commission based. So it was just a win-win for everybody. So I remember driving home and getting home and saying to my wife, a great week, but it's not making any money.
Mm-hmm.
So it was sleeves rolled up. Jackie, being a big player, really wanted to learn management, you know, do what Shannon was doing, and off we went, and we started to really knuckle down and build Eastco Bride.
Yeah, it's a stunning big shop, and it's very different, because all of a sudden you've got an office, so you don't need to go for your... Might have been a shame actually, because you weren't able to go for your fly pint on a Friday now, because you had
your straight home. Straight home.
But you had your separation by going up to the office, because there was obviously nowhere to, a bit like Great Western Road in that respect, there's nowhere to hide in Clarkson when you're on it, and everybody's there. So, you know, all of a sudden you've got width, space, you've got a mixture of on the wall sections, you've got a mixture of, you know, on the square sections like Buchanan Street. It's very unique, even within all of the Rainbow Room salons to this day. Eastco Bride's got a very different sort of footprint to it. Was that weird at first, just all of a sudden having all this room?
Again, I didn't really spend a lot of time thinking about it. You're so busy. But the office was good for me because it gave me... You have to think a lot when you have two salons. Yeah. Your time is thinking.
Of course.
Because every hour you're not on that floor, the money you lift, there's not much cost in it because you lift it. There's no wages to pay in it.
So we're the cheapest wage in the building.
Yeah. So being in the office doesn't make you any money unless you're good enough to have your people to be busy enough. And that is the gamble. Yeah. You know, and that's what Alan was trying to explain to me.
When did you make the decision to then? Because you're on 3 days on the floor just now. Were you?
No, I still cut 5 days.
Right.
But there'll be all day Saturday, all day Friday, short day Thursday, shorter day Wednesday, and most of Tuesday.
Right.
Because I'll be teaching or coaching or doing meetings with the teams.
Because obviously growing up in 365, that whole idea was that we were never meant to be 25% of the turnover and make sure you had time. Because since I'd had my wee dicky turn and been not well and I'd cut my client numbers down, the issue I find is even though I'm still in 5-6 days a week, sometimes I can't switch off between being a hairdresser manager, and I find that really, really tricky. And moving forward, what I'm going to need to sort of start doing is 4 days on the floor, and 2 days to be able to actually sit at the desk and be that guy, because I can't cram the clients together. I've got to leave them spaced out, so I've got recovery time in between each one of them, and I'm never giving that up. You know, I didn't become a hairdresser to be a business person. I became a hairdresser to be a hairdresser, and I now have my own business because, quite frankly, I would have got fired for being late every day for the last 30 odd years. So that was a cause and effect for me. So I'm at that position now at kind of 52 and had been no well and all that kind of stuff to make those decisions. So, and I'm doing that in one cell, right? You're doing that now successfully off the back of 2 cells. So how easy has that been to sort of go, right, hairdresser Adrian's over here and salon director hairdressers, salon director Adrian's here. How has it been to juggle that?
I think you have to find what works for yourself and not compare yourself to other people. I think that's the best advice. What works for me is I'm able to switch hats very quickly. So I don't find that a problem when I'm dealing with a situation. Again, Alan would always tell me to put the different hat on.
Yeah.
but you've mentally you have to put a different hat on.
I physically have them in my office. I
Yeah.
physically take the one
I
off,
can imagine,
and I actually physically put the next one on to try and get them into.
But again, if it needs to change another way, then you do that.
Yeah.
So for me, I don't find. I love the mixture of managing people, managing whether it's my assistants, my stylists, or I've got 2 fabulous receptionists that have been with me for years, and it's managing people, and then whether I'm in my office trying to invent a new product or working in trying to find a new keratin system to bring in for the company or whatever. You know, when I go down to do my client, then it's showtime, and it's like you're ready to perform and you're ready to engage, and my job is to wow somebody with information, with what could be done with their hair, and actually what does get done with the hair with the scissors and comb or colour. So I love the mixture, and for me, if I went on to another salon, I think that mixture would stop. So I'm happy with what I've got at the moment. That could change, but I've got a real good balance, and I think having a balance in your life is really important.
Brilliant. Well, obviously, this is the other thing, because in amongst all of this, between the car buying and the salon building,
that's coming in a wee bit.
That's because of these 4 kids.
Yeah, too many mouths to feed.
Exactly. That was you know, when they turn around and go, "How, Dad, why have you not got any of them anymore?" You go, "Because I've got the 4 of yous." That's why. And that's as important to you, if not more important. You know, your facial structure changes the minute I say kids, or talk to you about your kids, right? Going to kind of the way at the salon and being a boss lifts off, and this dad comes out, you know. And I mean, when did you have your first kid?
So my first child would be 2001.
Right. So you're knee deep in building Clarkson at that point. You know, well, you're not knee. Well, it's as you said, kind of that 5-year period. You think it's really flying.
Starting 5 to 8, it's really flying. So on comes Joseph, and first child. Yeah. So I remember myself and my darling wife took him home, and we closed the door, and we kind of just looked at each other to say, what do we do?
What do we do with this thing? There's no instruction manual.
I think we phoned the Chinese. Okay. So surprise. And then, you know, as my father said, I always said to him, "Why did you not warn me?" And he said, "Well, if you knew about it, you probably wouldn't do it." So
is that what he said to you? Yeah. That's brilliant.
This is the same man that I arrived in his car on a Friday morning. He used to drive me into an underground to get in, and he used to say, "What are you wearing?" He worked in the government, and he was dressed
completely
very sensible. So great conversations with my dad. But first child, 201, and again, like lots of my life, it's just I feel I'm a juggler. I should be in a circus. You're just juggling work that is so important. It's just a huge part of my life, to family life, you know, and it's I started to kind of change. My wife helped me a lot to understand having time for your kids was important, because I could work 7 days a week, 14 hours a day. Lucky I've got so much energy. It just does not stop. But I've been learned and educated and helped to really time management my life, and I do time out for my children.
Yeah, of course.
I'm very busy. I've got 4 children. I've got 2 shops and a lovely wife, but it's so important to take time for everybody. And people say to my friends, "There's not much time for yourself," but I'm not that kind of guy. It doesn't time for me doesn't bother me. I don't have an obsession to go and do something for myself. Yeah, I get a lot of pleasure from other people. So it's working through, whether it's my youngest or my oldest child. So. Yeah,
I mean, but that is your time. You know, I mean, again, obviously we've known each other for a long time, and passions are either, you know, your football, your boxing, good bottle of red wine, good plate of spaghetti or a nice big steak. You know, that way, you know, obviously you're passionate about your house and you've looked after it and you've taken care of it, and you've seen that grow and all these kind of things. So, you know, the idea that these things aren't ultimately for you, for them, and as a collective. Would seem daft, wouldn't it? You know, that way. And obviously, Cassie, you can talk about your wife, but Cassie obviously is a, you know, hairdresser in the brand, has grown up with us all, you know, and has been part of that eternal Rainbow International dysfunctional, non-related family that then you made her into a related member of the family. In that respect, that only comes through on both sides. So the way that you are with them and nurturing them, and the way that you've nurtured your team comes screaming out of it. So you're at this point, you've got your, you know, all intents and purposes, it's all, you know, where you want it to be. Where do you see yourself progressing? What do you still look forward to? And also, where do you see hairdressing going moving forward?
For myself, it's all about, still a lot of work to do with the two salons. So, and as you will know, even if you get it to a point, they're both crammed. Business doesn't stay the same unless you work at it.
Yeah.
You've got to work at it, and you've got to choose, are you serious about it or you're not? So my head doesn't stop. I'm always thinking of work, you know, and being there for my people and driving that forward. So there's still a lot of work to do. The salons are doing really well, and that's down to my great teams that are in it, great individuals who take ownership of the business. And yes, you steer the ship, but it's about them performing. So we're in a good position moving forward. Again, maybe going back to, I always deal with one thing at a time.
Yeah.
So for me, it's making these two salons the best they can be, and being there and supporting my team to let them grow and develop. And then I'll decide at that point what is the next phase in my life.
I mean, obviously what's came through for me, I think, is that idea of, you know, that it's coming from a really stable background, whether that's financially, culturally, systems in place, that the core of the business is so that then the opportunities that come or the difficulties that come up, well, I've got space and time in my brain to deal with that, which comes through. Obviously, your passion for the brand is screaming out you, you know, that way, which, you know, it wouldn't be a fluke for you to either have been with it that long and been that successful within it and help it grow to what it is today if it wasn't for that. And also your passion for, you know, you keep talking about having your scissors and your comb in your hand, which is great because you we do feel a bit empty, you know, hairdressers, we're a bit, I mean, I know I'm half Italian and all that, but we talk with your hands, but it's usually because we've got the comb and the scissors, so it's difficult. So, slightly different than the rest of the podcast, because obviously we usually only do the chocolate, but if there was anybody that deserved this drumstick lollipop more than anybody else, it's got to be you. So, on behalf of myself, all the team at Rainbow Room, anybody that's ever used a works treatment in their life, thanks very much, and it's been amazing talking to you today.
Thanks, Ricardo.